We clearly live in tumultuous times. There are world wars going on, famine and strife in many countries, and our own population is often at odds with each other over the politics of our own government. As Buddhists, what should we do, if anything? Master Soto-san tells us to follow the threefold practice. That is, first, cultivate our spirit. I've certainly found that following the practices of meditation, scripture reading, attending or listening to our services, and our Dharma groups has helped me cope. Though I often find our daily news disturbing, I find calmness through my practice and my interaction with our reverends and the whole Won community. Secondly, we are to inquire about human affairs and universal principles. To me, that part means we are to be aware of what our government is up to, both the good and the bad. And finally, he offers choice and action. To me, that means we should try to do something about what we feel is right. There'll be more on that later. But should we hunker down until whatever is bothering us subsides or passes? Or do we follow our practice and ignore the world around us? Or do we become more involved in our political society? What would Master Soto-san have us do? As Americans, many of us were taught in our high school civics classes that our Constitution calls for a separation of church and state. Some Americans become quite upset when they hear of a minister or preacher talking about politics. On the other hand, some of our faith leaders, like Dr. Martin Luther King, or North Carolina's own Dr. Reverend Barber, are famous for taking on political causes and criticizing political leaders. The Dalai Lama has openly criticized the government of Myanmar, as well as Buddhist leaders there, for their treatment of the Rohingyas. And while the Buddha provided us with the Eightfold Path as a guide for living, both he and Master Soto-san also gave us hope with the concept that all things are impermanent. More on that later. Master Soto-san has a lot to say about government. In our scriptures doctrine, our founding master said, "The way of religion and government steer the world can be compared to two wheels of a carriage. If the two wheels are completely worn out, or even if just one of them has some defect, or the driver's driving skills are poor, then a carriage won't run smoothly." He later continued, if religion and government are to steer the world well, they should guard against becoming damaged or corrupt in the course of time, and their leaders should apply laws and govern appropriately in accordance with the level of people's understanding. To me, this metaphor means it is up to us to have a knowledge of our religion and its leaders' actions, as well as an understanding and knowledge of our government's functioning and the efficacy of both. And as we consider this, we should be reminded that Master Soto-san said and wrote these things while Korea was under Japanese occupation. No doubt the manner in which his country was being ruled was of great concern to him. But he had to be very cautious about what he said and wrote at the time. Thus the metaphor. My wife Regan and I have at times gone door to door to register voters or distribute information about candidates that we supported. Some people will come to the door and say, "Oh, I'm not political," or "I don't vote." Regan has talked to women who say, "Well, my husband takes care of that." Perhaps these are some of the reasons our country ranks 31st in the world in voter turnout. Master Soto-san also said, even at the risk of your life, do what is right, no matter how much you dislike it. Personally, I think this is the most significant statement in all of our scriptures, and I've often contemplated this statement in respects to my own life. I feel it's helped me justify my actions earlier in life, and it's helped me to forgive myself for things I did that I thought were right at the time, like volunteering for the Marines in Vietnam, and also to question what I would do in future situations. But the question here is, as a Won Buddhist, what should I do about what I feel is right and wrong with our government? Our founding master leaves it to us to decide what is right. So what can or should we do? Well, first we can register to vote and then go vote. We can donate money and time to political campaigns and political parties. There's a saying that all politics is local, and that's true. The decisions made by your local city and county government and your school board may affect you personally more than national or international politics. In addition to voting, you can always contact your city council, the school board, the mayor, and of course your state and federal legislators, and even the president. But also, don't forget your state and federal agency heads and the governor. It's often well to know the chairs of governmental committees that may be especially important to you. Sometimes there are town hall meetings or listening groups, listening sessions by political leaders, not to mention rallies and protests and even visits to your legislators' offices. Unfortunately, it's often retirees like me who have the most time to be most active, and that makes younger voices all the more important to be heard. I realize that those of you who are not native-born citizens, those of you that are here on visas, green cards, or even those who are not natural or who are naturalized citizens, may be concerned about retribution for speaking out. Most unfortunately, these days those concerns may be valid. But you can still support causes that are important to you, again with your votes, money, and time. For years I've been involved in conservation causes, whereas my wife Regan has contributed significantly to public health organizations. These organizations are non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, which by law cannot be political. The columnist David Brooks, author of the book How to Get to Know People, has suggested that all the things I've just suggested here are far less important than doing one thing, talking to someone you disagree with. No doubt that can be the biggest challenge of all. We all shy away from conflicting conversations, and most of us are not skilled at interacting peacefully with those who have opinions other than our own. Again, our threefold practice can help us approach such conversations more knowingly and more calmly. And finally, our founding master said, if one seeks the Dharma by renouncing the secular world or separating oneself from the way of humanity, hoping to attain superpowers, that is in fact a perverse path. Master Sotasan lived during a time of great oppression in Korea. He had to be careful. But to me, his metaphors and comments suggest that we do what we can for what is right. Naturally, each of us has our own limits of comfort in becoming politically active. But his guidance has given me the strength and resolve and actually the courage to speak out and protest when necessary, for the truth that I think is right. And one more word about impermanence. My grandparents were born in the little town of Red Bluff, Northern California, just before 1900. They lived through World War I, the Depression, World War II, and the 60s, which included Vietnam, the assassinations, Watergate, and the race riots. But they've always were optimistic. Things have been worse, but they always got better. In fact, as children in the little town of Red Bluff, California, they heard on the radio of a pair of young fellows called the Wright brothers, who flew something called an airplane at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And yet they lived to see man walk on the moon and to fly in supersonic jet airliners. That's the nature of impermanence. So finally, perhaps we should remember what Mark Twain said. Politicians are no better than the people who elected them, and they're a lot better than the people who didn't vote at all. Thank you.